The BYU Cougars are headed to the home of the Sonoran Hot Dog, Tucson, Arizona, as they take on the Arizona Wildcats, and BYU will have to overcome a number of unique variables if they want to go 6-0.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast, and as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we delve into BYU and Arizona, get into the nitty-gritty of this matchup between the Wildcats and the Cougars and what it might tip the scales in terms of a chance for BYU to win this game and stay perfect on the season. We'll get into that. We'll also talk BYU basketball. They had their first formal on-court play last night with the blue and white scrimmage as part of Marriott Madness. I was there. What were my takeaways and who stood out? We'll delve into that, and then we'll finish up today's show looking at the rest of the conference, speaking of the Big 12 and also some of the national games, and make our picks. We call them Big 12 Big Picks, and we'll do that later on in today's show. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward segment, courtesy of Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, so BYU and Arizona square off tomorrow evening. Well, as of right now, when I record this podcast, that's when it's scheduled for. The biggest variable BYU is going to face in this game is the chance for, we're talking legit historic type weather conditions in Tucson, Arizona, if things play out the way that they've been projecting. Now, there's two different weather systems. One of them, a hurricane off the west coast of Mexico that's moved inland, and there is potential, as they have reported at some points, for up to 8 inches of rain this weekend in Tucson, Arizona. And this is a place, speaking of the Sonoran Desert, maybe, I don't know how many inches it sees in a given year. If it's more than 8, it's probably not by much. It's crazy to consider how much water could be in the forecast here. And BYU will have to deal with that much like Arizona could. The Big 12 has already told multiple reporters. I think Justin Spears is the first one that I saw, and I since talked to some people and got confirmation that the Big 12 is monitoring the situation. Could they move the game up in terms of kickoff time? Potentially. And that obviously has a whole different dynamic to it if that happens. And we'll be sure to update you on social media if and when anything like that happens. But as it stands, BYU, regardless of when it kicks off, likely will be dealing with weather conditions. That, in my mind, should favor BYU because they're an ultra-physical brand of football that Kalani Sitake has brought to the Cougars and has really implemented. And that is a style that I feel like favors teams when it comes to bad weather conditions. I'm not saying that Arizona is not physical. They've actually been pretty darn good at running the football this year. But BYU, as Kalani likes to do, uses a lot of boxing expressions. They like to lean on their opponents. And I expect if it comes down to it, BYU will be ultra content to have guys like LJ Martin jamming it down the throat of Arizona and letting BYU's offensive line dominate if they can. Now, Arizona's got an ultra-aggressive defense. Danny Gonzalez has done a marvelous job kind of reinventing that defense, and they're ball hawks. They are stingy, and BYU is going to have to combat that. But if the conditions are soggy, they're downright miserable, I like that for BYU. Other variables in this game include BYU potentially being without some of their guys. Jack Kelly on the Thursday night player availability report remains doubtful. BYU also downgraded Anisi Purcell, who's been a key backup at defensive tackle, to doubtful for this game. And then earlier this week, there was some to-do made about BYU's running back depth chart with Enoch Nawahine being down the depth chart a bit. Well, he's questionable for this contest, and that obviously could thin an already thin running back unit, because if Enoch Nawahine is unable to go, that leaves you with LJ Martin, Preston Rex, and Jovessa Damuni, and then beyond that, Charles Miska and the like. That is a recipe that BYU needs to obviously monitor very, very closely. Also, linebackers. A lot of them on this injury report. Probable includes Isaiah Glasker, Miles Hall, Naki Tuakoi, and Siale Acera. Of those four, Glasker and Acera figure to start for BYU in this game, whereas Miles Hall probably sees time on the field. Tuakoya is a guy who joined BYU for bowl season last year. I think he's more of a redshirt candidate, but could see some time on special teams. And then the other variable on the injury report in this is that Marcus McKenzie, BYU's resident special teams ace and backup cornerback, well, he popped up on the injury report yesterday as being out. And that's unfortunate because Marcus has dealt with numerous injuries during his time at BYU, and fingers crossed it's not a long-term deal for him. If he's going to miss extended time, that would be disappointing because it sure looked like the last couple of games he had regained his top form, in particular on special teams. Oh, I forgot one other variable in here. Sam Vanderhaar, BYU's stud punter who has been a key component with Marcus McKenzie in terms of pinning opponents deep. Well, he's expecting the birth of his first child, and his wife was due this week. I think it was Wednesday is what he was telling us in the media, that was the due date, and they've got contingency plans in place should she go into labor. Speaking of his wife, that he flies back on a private jet potentially and the like to make sure that he's there for the birth of his child. But that could throw a wrench in all this, because if Sam Vanderhaar ends up not being available, that means freshman Fuller Shirts. Yes, that's the name of BYU's backup punter, Fuller Shirts. I'm not joking. You can go Google it yourself. He would be in line to make his first ever kicks and start for BYU on special teams. If something with Sam and the birth of his first child, they're going to name it Xavier, I believe is what they said. And by the way, I should say on a personal aside, I wish nothing but the best for the Vanderhaar family. It's an exciting time. I can still vividly remember 9+ years ago when my oldest was born. It's a life-changing experience. And any of you who want to say, well, you should be, no, be there with your family. Football is one thing. Being there for the birth of your first child, that's another. Be there for that. It's just an aside. So overall, there are some very unique variables BYU's going up in this game against. We talked earlier this week on Wednesday about how good the Arizona defense is on paper and how BYU's going to have to combat that with their offense. Yesterday, we talked about BYU's defense and the success they had a season ago against Noah Fafita and the Arizona offense. BYU and Arizona should be pretty well acquainted with one another, and BYU's got a recent run of success against Arizona. And the crazy thing is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the 4th or 5th matchup against Arizona that have been played all at different venues. Remember, when BYU was independent, they played a game in Glendale at the Arizona Cardinals Stadium. They have played games in Las Vegas against one another. They've played in Provo, and now they're playing in Tucson. It's kind of a unique thing, but BYU's had good success against Arizona of late, and the hope is they continue that. My personal gut reaction is I do think BYU's offense, no matter what the weather situation is, no matter what conditions are and the like, I think that they want to get back to running the ball and making other teams fear that ability. Now, if Arizona, much like West Virginia and Colorado, plans to load the box, well, guess what? It's time for Bear Bachmeier to show off that arm even more than he already has. He forced West Virginia to back out of their 9- and 8-man boxes last week with his career high in passing. Well, Arizona very well may test him themselves because I'm sure that they believe they got better athletes across the board defensively, and I hope that Bear Bachmeier is equal to the task. He's a key, as he often is, as a quarterback. It's the most important position in football, and if Bear Bachmeier continues to kind of play his steady Eddie type of self, like the way he plays the game of football, I don't fear him going on the road in this environment. He's already played at Colorado. He's already played at East Carolina. The road environment, that's not, I think, a thing that's going to freak him out. He's going to go into this game confident in himself, and much like Kalani Sitake and others have said, he doesn't get too high or too low. He's a very kind of just right middle of the road type guy, and that's a good thing to have a quarterback like that, especially for how young he is. But I also want to see LJ Martin get untracked here. He's got 490 yards on the season, just a shade under 100 yards on average for the year, because through 5 games, almost 500 yards. He gained some big yardage late in last week's contest that got him close to that 100-yard mark. I'd like to see him get his 100-yard average back, and if Enoch Nawahine is unavailable, that's even more carries probably landing in his lap. And I don't think LJ is going to shirk being able to have extra reps on the field. You can tell that he is a guy who wants to play ball and get after it. And I fully expect, flipping over to the defense, that he, much like a guy like Isaiah Glasgow is listed as probable on the depth chart. And I could come back to eat these words, but I will guarantee decent amount of money that there's no way that Isaiah Glasker and Celia Serra miss this game unless something crazy happens. I just don't see them sitting out because they are guys who are born and bred to play this game of football. And I can tell you, I sat in the press box at LaVell Edwards Stadium last Saturday and kind of watching the demeanor of a guy like Isaiah Glasker on that sideline, you could tell that he was in some ways lost by not being out there on the field. And he is a guy that if he is cleared and he's capable of playing, I fully expect him to be out there. The glimmer of hope still exists for Jack Kelly, but I'll just say it on the record right now. I don't expect Jack to play in this game. Now, can he play against Utah next week? That's more what I'm thinking is he probably sits this week in the hopes of playing in the rivalry game next Saturday, but we'll see how it all shakes out. I do like BYU's chances in this game because a couple of you, and I got a couple of emails saying this, BYU, if you take out the FCS opponents, BYU's record in terms of their opponents so far is sub 500. Guess who also is faced an opponent slate of sub 500? That's Arizona. Some people think they're paper tigers, and we're talking about different cats in the genome here, but I do think Arizona is good. Are they as good as the likes of Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, that BYU will face in upcoming weeks? No, I don't think they are that, but they are playing at home. They're playing high-level football right now, and they will want nothing more than to knock off a top 25 opponent. And Brent Brennan, that would be a nice feather in his cap as he tries to regain the trust of Wildcat fans in the process. I will say it right now. My prediction, I think I was talking to somebody last night at the blue and white game. The more I think about this, I do think it's a tight affair. Our friends at FanDuel have BYU as a narrow 1.5 point favorite as of recording of this podcast. And it originally opened up as a pick'em at a lot of different areas. I look at this as a game that it swings less than a touchdown, I feel like, at most in terms of the margin of victory. So I will say it right now on the record. Considering the circumstances, the weather obviously could play and wreak havoc on this. I think if it's decent weather conditions and everything plays out as normal as it possibly can, give me BYU 31, Arizona 27. I think it's a tight affair, but I think BYU goes to 6-0, and they'll do it the hard way, it feels like, because that could be a really, really tight game when turnovers and the like could be pivotal as they often are. All right, coming up next, BYU basketball took to the court last night for their annual blue and white game, and I thought there was some things that stood out to me from what I observed from the first formal on-court activities we've been privy to see from AJ DeBonsa and others, and we'll get into that next as we roll on this edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by our friends at DoorDash. It's like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it matters most. Let's break it down. For BYU this past week, I don't think you can go any other way than our guy, Bear Bachmeier. He's been absolutely electric all season long, sets a career high in the first half against West Virginia in passing, and was a big key reason why BYU was able to beat the Mountaineers. His turnovers notwithstanding. He has no hesitation, no delay. He's got a very, as I said, steady Eddie type of nature to him. And if you've been watching him play week after week, this performance was not a fluke, Bear is on a streak. And just like Bear delivered for BYU, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. The DoorDash Saturday that you order, stack it up all season long, save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs through 11/18. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there. I was at the Marriott Center last night, and I took my oldest son with me to the game. And a lot of you understand that I work in media, and that obviously changes the dynamic a lot of times when they're on a media credential because I can't take my kids. But I figured last night, you know what? It's open seating, and I can go and enjoy the game and still observe and take some things in, but also enjoy some time with my son. We got a Cougar tail. We got a couple of hot dogs. We had a great time watching the game. And the biggest thing is, once again, walking around the concourse and people just coming up and saying hi. I am absolutely floored time and again by all of you who come by and say hi and say you enjoy the podcast. It means the world to me. So I want to give us a couple shout outs. Eric from the facilities team, he stopped by to say hello. Russell also stopped by, says he's an everydayer. And Russell, you're the man. Appreciate you taking a picture with me. A couple other people took pictures with me as well. I apologize. I didn't write down all the names, so I'm going to leave some people out. I think it was Coleman I met. We also have Ben, by the way, who's a student at BYU, just got into the supply chain management track in the Marriott School of Business. That's not an easy thing to do. So congratulations to you, Ben. Matt also said hello last night. So to any and all of you, if I didn't mention your name and you said hi last night, thank you for your support. And more importantly, hope you guys enjoyed the show, because what we saw from BYU basketball was, I think, the first glimpses at this team that's full of dynamic athletes, but more importantly, a lot of unselfish play. Last night, AJ DeBonsa was a guy that his shot was struggling. He was just unable to hit a lot of shots, it felt like, unless he was right at the rim. And there are nights like that in basketball. It's the simple fact of the sport, because it's a really tough thing to do under pressure. The one thing I noticed about AJ, and it's something that we've seen on film from him from his high school days playing for the U.S. men's U18 team, his ability to get to his spots wherever he wants on the court, whether he's trying to post up in the high post, he's going above the arc and trying to facilitate that way, he's back cutting, his ability to get where he needs and wants to go on the court, that is an incredible skill he's got. And he will continue to hone it, obviously, both at BYU and on into the pro game. But he's already got an incredible sense. And I saw it and I know it's a scrimmage, but I saw it last night, is his ability to get where he wanted to go on the court. People can't stop him. There are players out there, and most of them are in the NBA these days, that are able to essentially force and impose their will on their opponents. And AJ has that force. And that's a term that Quinn Snyder, the former Utah Jazz coach, used all the time. And it's become more in vogue in college basketball. And AJ possesses it. Other things I observed. I think that if you're not paying attention to the name Hadim Mboop, and I think I got his name pronounced right. I know it's spelled like you're going to say Kadim, but I think it's Hadim Mboop. Folks, we are looking at a guy that he joined BYU midway through last season and redshirted. Remember, he was at Utah Prep Academy for the first part of the season, graduated from there, and then enrolled at BYU. He's from the NBA Academy in Africa, and he looks very much the part of a third wheel on the wing for BYU. But even more than that, his versatility, being able to play on the wing and also on the interior, I think it's going to lend itself to BYU having a much more versatile lineup with him in it. I think that he has got all the skills. I was really, really impressed with his poise. His shot making, I thought, was pretty dang good, but his size and his ability to move is incredible considering how big he looks out there on the court. He looks like a legit old school power forward, kind of moves like a guard though. It's pretty impressive. So keep an eye on Mboop. I think he's got a lot of potential in him. Alexei Kostic was probably the one player who stood out the most to me last night. He's got a nice stroke, folks. Remember, he's coming over from the Adriatic League. Was a late addition to BYU's roster, but he came in, and I think we had like 8 points in like just a few minutes in that first half of the blue and white scrimmage. And he's got a dead-eye ability from anywhere on the court. And more importantly than that, he can put it on the deck. He can facilitate the offense, and he can move the ball. That's one thing that Kevin Young values highly, is guys who, even if they're not having their shot fall, much like AJ didn't last night, is their ability to move off the ball, but also facilitate the offense and keep it moving. That's one thing also about AJ in this game is, I think he understood that, hey, shot may not be going as well tonight, but he had 3 assists early. I think he ended up with 4 or 5 overall, at least in that first half that I recall. And his facilitator ability is really, really nice because he gets this rep as this just ball dominant player. He doesn't have to have the ball to dominate. He's got an ability to check off and give it off to other guys and put them in positions to succeed. And that brings me to Richie Saunders. We had John Rothstein on social media about a weekish ago. He was in Provo, and he said that he believed that Richie Saunders could make 100 threes this year. Now, that means if you kind of go by the math, you make 40% of your threes, you're going to have to shoot somewhere north of 200 to make that many threes in a given season. That's a lot of three-pointers to get up. But watching the way, as I mentioned, that BYU's offense was moving last night, Richie Saunders is going to find himself with a lot of good looks. And it's not just necessarily beyond the arc, but the ability for other guys to force the defense to adjust and bring them to them. That allows a guy like Richie, because he made his bones early on in his career as that junkyard dog, a glue guy. He was like the sixth man of the year, according to John Rothstein. His ability to do the dirty work, back cut, find open lanes, and continue just to find ways to score. I think Richie is going to look even better in this year's version of BYU basketball than he did a season ago as the Big 12's most improved player and a first-team all-conference honoree. That's pretty impressive and pretty hard to do, but I'm telling you, the glimpses I saw on the court last night, he's going to have a lot of great looks, and I see why John Rothstein in some small way believes that he could make 100 threes this year. He is finding open looks that I don't think even existed in many doses last year. And Richie's got an ability to get shots off in any circumstance. He's got a really nice compact shot, but some of the space he was afforded last night by opponents and teammates that know him extremely well because they go up against him in practice every single day. I was really, really impressed with what Richie flashed on the court. And if that's legit and that's going to be part of what BYU is going to look like, yeah, I see why John Rothstein believes that he could go off this season. Other things. I thought Dominic Diomande had his moments. I think he's a really nice, I think more of a defensive player at this point. Kennard Davis Jr., by the way, I have been projecting, I think as well as most people, as him being kind of that fifth starter in BYU's lineup. I was impressed with him. He's a compact, strong athlete, but has some nice shot-making ability. I thought you saw that in small doses last night, but it was unfortunate to see Rob Wright, Dawson Baker. I think Brody Kozlowski also missed out, and I think there was one other player, I'm not remembering off the top of my head, who sat out last night, and Kevin Young in his post-game comments said he's not that concerned. He called him banged up. So that I know you wanted to see Rob Wright III lobbing it up to guys like Keba Keita, but I think that give him some time. They're obviously, it's a scrimmage versus you're going to have your first exhibition game a week from tomorrow out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then you've got North Carolina coming in. And then we're 3 weeks away conservatively from tip off of the season, folks. And I'm looking forward to it. And those guys, get them healthy. Don't worry about this preseason stuff. Worry about when you get to Villanova on November 3rd. That's when it gets real. And that's when you want Rob Wright and those guys on the court. So I thought overall, BYU showed some glimpses of a team that I think is going to be a lot of fun. A couple of you, I got some messages from the Locked On Cougars Insider Group members. Jake, I'm like you. I don't want to wish away football season, but this BYU basketball team, they look fun. And that's one thing is you could tell they were having fun out there on the court. It's not where they're grinding and they're trying to figure out and they're you can tell that they're thinking too much. No, it's just kind of a free-flowing state of basketball. And that's highly appealing stuff to watch them do that. And even when they shuffled the lineups, moving guys onto different teams for the second half, I was technically like a second game. I was impressed by just how free flowing and fluid it already looks for this BYU basketball team. That's the thing about it is it doesn't look disjointed. It doesn't look like they need more time to gel. They look like they're just out there playing ball with their guys. And that's a great sign, I think, for this BYU basketball team, because let's be real. I'll reiterate another point I've made on this podcast. Expectations have never been higher for a BYU basketball team. I'm not talking for Jimmer Fredette, Danny Ainge, or literally anybody else in BYU basketball history. The stakes, the expectations, the hype, it's all at a sky-high level, an all-time level at that, and they have to match that. And I think that what I saw last night with it just being a scrimmage, you can tell this is a team. I don't think they're fretting too much about having to answer for the hype and the like. I think they're just out there playing ball, and they expect to play high-level basketball at all times. And that's a great, great thing if you're a Cougar fan. All right, coming up next, we'll finish up today's show with our Big 12 big picks. Who do I think is going to win this weekend across the Big 12, as well as the top 25 matchups across the country? We do it every week here on the podcast, and we'll get into that next as we round out this edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers, you can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. If your first $5 bet hits, You unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And the best part about FanDuel, that every way you want to go about betting things. You believe BYU has got it locked down to beat Arizona tomorrow, or you want to take the futures odds on an over-under for BYU basketball this upcoming season, it's all available to you from our friends over at FanDuel. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats for the deep dive, FanDuel makes the game day experience that much better for you as a sports fan. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, $5 bet if it hits $300 in bonus bets, courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Now, Mazda is moving the game forward. Is those there for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. Well, the moment I want to highlight is actually coming off a low light from the West Virginia game. Remember, Bear Bachmeier had a turnover, and then he comes right back out on the field, throws an interception. The very next time he's back out on the field, he puts a pass picture perfect right into the hands of Chase Roberts. And had Chase had, maybe a little more speed, as Parker Kings like to make fun of him, unhitch that wagon, he still had 21 miles an hour. The bigger point was that pass was about as good as you could have hoped for, and it really got BYU back on track offensively. There are moments in every game that seem to have that, even if they don't score a touchdown. It was an 85-yard pass, the longest such pass at LaVell Edwards Stadium since 1996, and that's why we gave it the moment of the week, and that's what keeps us moving forward. And when you follow what moves you, the expected is only the beginning, and just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. It's all courtesy of your friends over at Mazda. Move and be moved. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and join us. Be a part of the Insider Group. Support the show. It's $5 a month to get the insider intel that you crave, and more importantly than that, get a 14-day free trial before you're charged a single penny. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. And I will say, I will issue a public mea culpa. For some reason last night, as I was getting ready to go down to Marriott Madness, I thought it was Wednesday night. And I typically call for our mailbag stuff, which we typically do on Fridays, on Thursday. So in my head, I was like, okay, we'll ask for that tomorrow. Then I got home from Marriott Madness and said, hold up, it's Friday tomorrow. And it was already late. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get many questions. So I apologize to Locked On Cougars Insider Group publicly. We'll do a special mailbag or something. We'll do something in our chat, and I'll reach out to you guys. But thank you for understanding if you did not get that text last night and wondering, hey, you're going to do a mailbag this week, Jake? I intended to. I just got off on my day, so I apologize for that. All right, but let's get to our Big 12 big picks before we go on today's show. Now, some pretty big news. Arizona State, ranked 21st in the country, is headed to Utah tomorrow night. And I know a number of you probably will watch this with a split screen while you keep your eye on BYU in the latter stages of the Cougars game, because this one kicks off at 8:15. But yesterday, the player availability report for Arizona State listed Sam Leavitt as doubtful. And Chris Cartman from Sun Devil Source 24/7 Sports said it's legit, and it's very unlikely, it's the term that he used, that Sam Leavitt plays in this game against the Utes. That is putting a major player and a key figure in a game that's been looked forward to on the sidelines. I was already kind of leaning towards picking Utah in this game, and I just think without Sam Leavitt, I'm still picking the Utes, and I'm actually picking them by a fairly sizable margin. It's currently kind of been hovering between a touchdown to 10 points, and without Sam Leavitt, I just don't know that Arizona State has the horses to get it done. I know that Jeff Sims has been around for quite a while playing a lot of college football, but he's not Sam Leavitt. So give me the Utes to beat the Arizona State Sun Devils, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Now, UCF and Cincinnati face off in a game of upstarts this season. Cincinnati is probably the biggest upstart of the year. I think Cincinnati goes to 5-1, folks, and very well could be ranked next week with that win over UCF. That'll drop the Knights to 3-3, but I don't think the Knights are that bad. I just think Cincinnati with Brendan Sorsby, they're absolutely rocking and rolling right now. We've got Houston at Oklahoma State. No offense to the Pokes, but whoever's going to play them the rest of the way, I'm picking against them. I think Houston goes to 5-1 there. We have number 22 Iowa State at Colorado. Colorado's 2-4. Their 4 losses are all to Power 4 opponents, and in fact, all 4 of those Power 4 opponents, they haven't necessarily been boat raced in those games. They've been in the games, but you got to find a way to win. Do I think they get the win against Iowa State? I thought they were going to beat TCU last week, but fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 4 times. Give me Iowa State on the road in Boulder. TCU at Kansas State. Now, TCU's an interesting case because they're 4-1, but they've not looked as dominant as I thought they were going to be. Now, going up against Kansas State, Dylan Edwards is expected to miss this weekend. I was actually thinking when I was earlier in the day, when I was talking and thinking about these games, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take Kansas State to win this game. No Dylan Edwards, no chance. Give me the TCU Horned Frogs in Little Manhattan. And then we got Kansas at Texas Tech. The Red Raiders are the class of the Big 12 until proven otherwise. They're ranked 9th in the country, and for good reason. I just don't see Kansas getting by Texas Tech at their home field. Speaking of Jones AT&T Stadium, I think Tech rolls, and it's unfortunate for Kansas because I think Kansas is pretty good, but I think they're dropping to 4-3 and going to be having some people say, whoa, hey, what's going on with Kansas? I don't think they're that bad, but I just think that Texas Tech, they're that good. All right, nationally real quick, Ohio State at Illinois. I think Illinois is a bit of a paper tiger. Ohio State, they're rocking and rolling. Give me the Buckeyes to roll in Champaign. Then we have number 8, Alabama at number 14, Missouri. I don't know what to make of Alabama. Every time I pick against them, they win. And every time I think they're going to lose, every time I think they're going to win, they lose. I'm picking Missouri here. Missouri, I think, is underrated in this game. They're 5-0. They're ranked 14th in the country, and they've got the game at home in Columbia. I don't know what it is, but I'm giving Mizzou to beat Alabama and throw another wrench in the Alabama hype train. We have number 7, Indiana at number 3, Oregon. This is a game that you want to talk about two petty coaches, Dan Lanning and Kurt Cignetti. Whew, could be some fireworks here. Now, I think traveling across the country for Indiana, that's going to be an interesting dynamic, but I don't know what it is about the Hoosiers. Fernando Mendoza is absolutely electric, by the way. If you have not watched him, he's got a great name, Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback for Indiana, a transfer from Cal. He's been electric all year long, but Dante Moore, in his own right, has been absolutely awesome. I think this game should deliver. It should match the hype, but give me Oregon by like 1 point. I think the Ducks get it done at home. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. I'm looking forward to that one. And then any other games I want to talk about here. Okay, number 15, Michigan at USC. It's a decent game. I actually think that USC is better than I think we're giving them credit for, and playing at home in the Memorial Coliseum, Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. I'll take USC to upset Michigan, even though I don't necessarily consider it all that big of an upset. It's just it's a unranked versus ranked game. And then one other game here. We do have the Red River rivalry between number 6, Oklahoma, and Texas. Here's the deal. John Mateer plays, Texas rolls. John Mateer doesn't play, I think Texas – no, sorry, I screwed that up. Rewind. John Mateer plays, Oklahoma rolls. John Mateer doesn't play, speaking of the Oklahoma quarterback who's trying to come back from a broken hand, surgery on a broken hand, his throwing hand, in fact. So I think if he plays, they're going to absolutely roll in this game. If he doesn't play, I think it's closer, but I still think Oklahoma wins. So there you go. That's my picks, and we'll see how it goes. I'm still hovering. I've said to you guys, I'll write down the actual numbers. I'll have them for you guys next week. But last check, I am 4 games over 500 for the year. I've been kind of hovering around that literally since like week 1. Now we're in week 7. So it's kind of been a 50-50 split most of the week, and most of the weeks, I should say. But as always, it's a lot of fun to make these picks and see how it all plays out. And like I said, I'm not doing this against the spread. I'm just picking money line winners, just straight up who I think is going to win the game. So as always, thank you for your support of the podcast, and enjoy the game tomorrow. I will update you guys on social media. I'll probably get a short out and pass it along to Insiders Group members as well. If this game time does move, keep an eye on that, because if the weather wreaks havoc in Tucson, it obviously could necessitate a change, and we'll obviously have that coverage for you guys in the lead up to the game. I am planning on doing a special game day a special podcast, doing it live on YouTube ahead of the game. And of course, we'll also have our postcast after this game goes final. Whenever it goes final, we'll find out how that all plays out. But as always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Thank you to all of you who said hi at the Marriott Center last night. Hope to see many more of you out in the wild, as I like to say, as things continue to unfold here for the BYU Cougars. But make sure you check back for updates on the game time with BYU in Arizona, should it move. And obviously, be back here tomorrow as an everydayer to get you ready on a game day for BYU and the Arizona Wildcats, where I've got BYU once again winning 31-27 over the Wildcats. More to come on the Locked On Cougars podcast.